Hello, everybody. My name is Anshante Brown, and I am from the Elijah Network, South Day One Voice Community Coalition. And first, I just want everybody to breathe. We are in an unprecedented time, but we will get through this, and that is exactly what we're going to talk about today, ways of getting through this. So today I have a very special guest, Sonia Brown Boyne. She is a licensed mental health counselor. She's a social worker from the University of Miami Comprehensive AIDS Program, as well as an adjunct professor for Trinity International University Counseling Psychology Department, as well as a national motivational speaker with over 30 years of cumulative experience in the field of education, substance abuse prevention and treatment, and mental health counseling. How are you doing today?
Whew, well, I'm well. With all those things you listed, I'm tired. But I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So what are we talking about today?
So today, basically, we're talking about healthy and unhealthy ways of coping during this COVID-19 time, specifically in relation to prevention of substance use, especially amongst the youth. As you know, at this time being quarantined, stayed at home, isolated, all that, it does increase the risk of youth using substances, and so that's one thing we want to prevent, especially at a time like this.
Absolutely. I think it's an excellent topic. It's a necessary topic because we know that we're already seeing those increases in substance use. We're seeing an increase in all types of coping, maladaptive coping or unhealthy coping as we would refer to it, because we are in a season that people are not familiar with and we don't know how to do this well. Nobody that's pretty much alive at this point, unless they're over 100 years old, has ever seen something like this happen before. So the best we can do is try to connect to what is this like, what does this remind me of. And for many of us and people I speak with, it's kind of like living down here in South Florida, waiting for a hurricane to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or life after the hurricane. So you stock up on all this food and stuff, and then the storm either comes or it doesn't come, and either way, you use up and eat up all of your food, and then you wait for the next storm to come around. And I think the difference that we're kind of faced with now is there's not an end time to it that we're experiencing. It's not even like when kids are on spring break and so you do all your grocery shopping and you say to your kids, this food better last till Friday or you're going to be hungry. There is no Friday that we're seeing right now. We don't know how long we're staying inside or having to adjust the way we're functioning and navigating this. I think that's one of the biggest issues that people are dealing with.
Yes. And so at a time like this, youth are dealing with a lot. They're dealing with stress, anxiety, not knowing, of course, when this is going to end, when they can go back to their normal, or even just being bored. They're home and they're bored. And so what is one piece of advice or some pieces of advices you would give to these youth or to the parents at home with their youth at this time?
Oh man, okay, so you're limiting me to one. And if you've ever spoken with me before, it's hard for me to limit it to one. I think probably the biggest advice I would, I don't know if it's biggest, probably the most profound piece of advice would be that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
We've never been here before. We don't know how to do this right. It's unfamiliar for everybody. And so it's okay to not know how to cope with this. It's okay to one day feel like this is going to pass and I'm going to be okay and everybody's going to be okay. And the next day or 6 hours later to feel like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Am I going to live? Am I going to survive? What's going to happen with my life? So that's, if we can start from that place that says the I don't know is okay, then we can start dealing with what do we do with all the things I don't know. And then out of that, we figure out what do I know, because that's what I'm going to get into in a little bit. If I know that I don't know everything, then I can focus on what I do know and start working from there.
That's good. Good. And so one of our main focuses is definitely youth. And so youth, this is challenging because they're home, but they still have to go to school, per se.
Sort of.
Some may have siblings, so not only are they teaching themselves or doing lessons for themselves, but they're helping out in the house. Sometimes it's just being in the house. It's not always fun. For me, I'm not in school at the moment, but I still work. And so, of course, I have my work schedule. Then it's like, now I'm back off work schedule. And so, it's like, how do you get through a day? How is a way you can get through a day saying, okay, I'm up, I'm awake, I had breakfast, I know I have to do this today, but after that, I can't go anywhere, can't do anything. How would you navigate just one day?
All right, so I think before I go directly to that answer, I would like to say a really big hello and thank you for doing life right now to the high school seniors and the college seniors, but the high school seniors whose lives are totally upended right now, like prom, senior this, senior that, graduation. I've seen a lot of memes and a lot of folks are joking, you know, you're going to do commencement by telecommunication and we're joking about it, but I remember being in high school like a century ago and it was one of the things you work so hard to get to that point, and now it's all upended. So for a lot of those students to say, keep doing your work at home, it's like, for what? Like, I'm done. And now what comes next? And how do I prepare for college when I don't know when that's coming, if it's coming, with everything that's going on now? So to those high school seniors, I really just want to say thank you for holding on, and know that, you know, time is good. This time is going to pass. It's going to shift, and we'll talk a little bit more about who you are in this season and why that's so profound. And then the other group that I want to really touch on before we get to just an average day are those children who are in very difficult situations at home. We know that there are abuses that take place. We know that there is violence that takes place in some homes. And we know that for some children, going to school and being able to leave the home every day was the safest time of the day. And it was an opportunity to be away from people who might have been hurting or hurtful. So it's really important that if you're listening to this, you know that there are resources, and I'm sure there are numbers that we're going to give out that we'll be able to get some folks to help you in those situations. And asking those children to survive during the season is going to be even harder. So the suggestions and recommendations I'm going to give are things that work for everybody in general, but won't work for everybody specifically, because everybody has their own unique situation to address. So having said all of that, what do you do on an average day? Number one, you get up. One of the things that's really important is, remember I talked about there are things we don't know, and then what do I know? I know what works for me. I know that rhythms are important. I know that schedules are important. I know that finding a bright light in every day is really important. So getting up every morning is really important. After that first week of, oh good, I get to sleep in. You figure out that 24 hours is a long stretch of time to have nothing to do. And you get really bored really quickly, and you start filling your mind and your space with really dangerous things. So if you get up in the morning, wash your face, brush your teeth, put on your clothes. When people say, oh my God, I get to work from home, I get to work in my bedroom slippers. I do, but I can't foot drag. So you gotta get up and figure out, get up, get dressed, as though you are addressing the day, because you really are. The day is still yours, and you still have work to do. You mentioned schoolwork. So if you have schoolwork to do, it means still doing it. Now, I am a reverse circadian rhythm person. I do well at night. So when I started working at home, going back to the night rhythm and doing my work at night was like, yes, this is wonderful. It's not, because the people I work with and answer to and my clients are awake during the day, and I have to be awake to take care of them. And if I was up all night because it was convenient for me, then I'm actually miserable by the end of the next day. So if you have to check in, students, if you've got to check in with your teachers during the day, then no, you can't really be up all night and still be effective. A lot of teachers are doing Zoom meetings and such, so you do have to get up and get dressed just as though you were going to school every day. Rhythms and routines are important for the human brain. So do those things. Eat your meals. Set your schedule. If you ate breakfast at school at 7:30, and then you ate lunch at 10:30, eat breakfast at 7:30, eat lunch at 10:30. Eat your snack at whatever time. The fridge becomes your enemy when you are home all day. How many of you, raise your hands, have gone to the refrigerator at least 20 times a day and the same things are still in there? The same thing you saw last time you went. The refrigerator did not sprout new food, and so stop going in there and looking in there. This connects a lot to substance abuse prevention, because at some point, if, like many adults, the beer is in the refrigerator, the wine is in the refrigerator, it is way too easy then when you're going in there. If on an average day you go in, you know what you want some juice, you want some snacks, you go in, you grab your snacks, you run back out. You're going out to play, you're going to do whatever. When you're at home with this much time on your hands, and you go and you open that refrigerator, you start really looking. And you start looking at things that you wouldn't normally see. And you start saying, today might be the day I try carrots. Or today might be the day I try that wine that I see my folks drinking because it helps them to feel calm. I'm feeling a little anxious. Let me just try it. So paying attention to your rhythms, paying attention to your schedules and sticking to them as much as possible is super helpful. Get up, get dressed, put on your clothes. If you wear uniforms to school, wear your uniform. Put on at least a shirt. You can keep on your pajama bottom, but wear your uniform shirt and then go through your day. Do your work just as you have done it. And that's an absolute benefit to kind of staying focused and keeping your mind on track. And then ending your day. Let me toss that in there. End your day when it ends. So if school ended at a certain time, if you had after school extracurriculars, do it then. Like, talk to your friends then. Do your exercises then. If you were in sports, football, whatever, and you can't go out, you have your front yard or your backyard or your bedroom or whatever. Do what you would do that's helpful during that time. Save it for then. Don't disrupt your schedule if you can avoid that. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool.
And so we touched on basically getting going, trying to stay busy in a way, healthy busy. So for a person who may have trouble with that or already has stress or anxiety, how is it different from them? How can you help them in a way stay away from substances? Because when your mind is racing like that, it's not always healthy.
And it's not always easy to manage. So I want to change stay busy to stay occupied.
Okay.
Because sometimes staying busy is an enemy to us. You stay so busy. That's part of the problem a lot of us are dealing with. The anxiety is coming up now because we're used to busy. We're used to going and going and going and going. And what the pandemic has required us to do is stop. It really has required us to sit still, stay put, and most of us don't know how to do that. Some of us, because we have legitimate mental health disorders, anxiety disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, attention deficit disorder. So some of it is not behavioral and it's chemical. If you have a mental health disorder diagnosed and you should be on medication, please get on medication. Take it. Follow it the way that the provider says to. If you have insurance and so you have telehealth treatment, so you can do mental health counseling by computer or by phone, then use those resources. Now is a good time to use it. If you don't have insurance, there are providers that can still provide it without insurance. So that is off the top. If you're talking about coping with anxiety, make sure that you're getting the appropriate treatment. And a lot of people, especially I am of the browner persuasion, so those of us that have a little more melanin than other people tend to think that counseling is not okay and medication is not okay, and we actually make ourselves suffer more than we need to. So when we think about counseling, or when we think about medication for things like anxiety, I kind of put it in the perspective of if you have asthma and you're having an asthma attack so you can't breathe, there are very few people I know who would look at you and say, suck it up, be a man, and breathe. As your mom, I'm going to find your pump, right? Or if you have a heart condition and you're out there running laps because you play football and you pass out, I'm going to be mad at the coach and say, don't you know he has a heart condition? He should be taking his medication. Well, it's the same thing. If you have anxiety or depression or any of the other hundreds of mental health disorders, then you should be taking your medication, finding out what works with the provider. Do not self-medicate. That's one of the biggest things, and we'll talk, I think, a little more in-depthly about that, where what many people are doing are using marijuana and alcohol and other substitutes, food even, to self-medicate. And it works because the brain has these amazing synapses and connections that say, this feels good, it makes me feel good. But some things are really disruptive, even cigarettes, the nicotine in cigarettes, so think about that. If it is not a chemical issue that requires medication, it may just need counseling. It may need somebody to talk to. And I can tell you, as a mental health counselor, having a therapist and having a friend are two different things.
Yeah.
Absolutely different things. Now, if I'm a student and I don't understand the math that the teacher taught me, I might have a friend who could explain that to me better than the teacher can. A lot of people say that about counseling. I have my friends. I talk to my friends. They're my people. Or I have my people on Facebook, and I can put my problems out there. Absolutely. Good friends. If you have really good, healthy friends, you need therapy less. However, if I've got a heart condition, I'm not going to my best friend to treat my heart condition. I have asthma. I'm not going to my best friend to treat my asthma. I am going to the specialist who paid a lot of money to be trained to know the difference between bronchitis and pneumonia to be able to treat my asthma. I'm not going to my best friend to say, hey, do you hear me wheezing? Do you think I need my... It's like not going to happen. Now, my friends in those cases become my support team. Those are the people that when I'm doing life and I don't even realize I'm wheezing, those are the people that say, hey, you don't look good. You don't sound good. Want me to get your pump? That's not going to be, so I'm going to take my medication as I need. Or you don't sound good. I think you should call your doctor. But that person doesn't become the substitute for that professional. So that's where those two things come in. When it comes to just overall coping with things where you see your therapist once a week, you take your medication every day, and then you need the help doing the day-to-day stuff. This again comes back to what can I control? What do I know? Well, I know what things set me off.
Yeah.
So it's just like if you're lactose intolerant and you want to sit there and drink a gallon of milk because you just feel like eating and drinking some milk, then you better know that you're not going to be fun to be around the next 24 hours, right? So in the same way, I know certain things I watch are going to produce anxiety. Certain things I listen to are going to make me feel more of my depressive symptoms. Things are going to trigger me. So I can't watch the same shows you watch. You might like watching vampire shows. I cannot. You cannot look at me and say, oh, but you're a grown-up and you know it's just TV. I cannot, because I process things too deeply. I'm going to take away with me those things that I saw in the show, and they're going to stick to me, where you can watch it and rinse right off and keep going. So I have to know what I'm paying attention to during the day. You might be able to stay on Facebook and watch it for 5 hours and watch people put their lives up, or Instagram. I'm sorry, I'm old, so I'm saying Facebook. But you might be able to be on Instagram and watch people put their lives on all day where they look beautiful and life is wonderful and feel really great at the end of the day. I'm going to look at it and go, lie, swipe, lie, swipe, lie. And after a few minutes, I'm just going to be irritated and aggravated because I know they're lying. So I cannot. I just cannot. You have to know what hurts you, and you have to know what helps you. You have to know when you need a timeout. When you think about timeout, we think about timeout for little kids. Again, we melanin people tend to think like things like timeout should not be used. Well, if you know the history of timeout, it really wasn't designed for as a punishment. It's designed as a place for that child to get out of that situation, to go take a break and think about it. We used to not have to call it timeout. You took a time away. And for most parents who are listening to this, you may need a timeout. If your child needs a timeout, you probably need one. Mm-hmm. You need to step away, especially when you're staying in a house with people all day together. Now you need a moment to say, I'm going to go give myself a timeout. Because if I don't, one of us are going to be out of time. So I'm going to give you a timeout. I'm going to give myself a timeout because I'm about to lose it. So you need to know what your threshold is. One too many of anything is my threshold. Not enough of something is my threshold. I know for myself, I have to have 7.5 hours of sleep, at least. Not because I want to, because I think I can function on 4. Remember I said I'm a night person.
Yeah.
So I'll go to sleep really late and think I can do 6 o'clock in the morning. As I've aged, my body has been saying, ma'am, you cannot. So what I have learned by paying attention over time is if I can do at least 7 hours, I can function pretty well. Mm-hmm. Where in my life earlier I could do 4 and keep on running, my body has taught me 4 hours is not enough. 7 hours, otherwise round about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to want to hit a lot of people. So I have to make myself go to bed to be able to do at least 7 hours. So managing the stresses means figuring out what is good for you. Mm-hmm. How do I cope? What works well for me? Does chocolate work well for me? In the moment, yes. Absolutely. It's a wonderful thing. It helps me feel so happy about life until my stomach starts hurting or I take my blood sugar and my diabetes says, hey, look, I'm still over here. I cannot use chocolate to cope. It's not healthy for me. But what is healthy for me? A good walk. A moment to just go stand in the sun and get a little bit of vitamin D that most of us in Florida, especially South Florida, are vitamin D deficient. If I can go outside and go soak up some sun, it actually changes my mood. Talking to a good friend for a short enough period of time to get a good boost, but not long enough time to get into the drama. We don't have enough time in these days to be sitting here doing drama with people. So it's being able to know, hey, quick call, I got 5 minutes. Just to get a boost, give a boost, but not to overdo. And then we'll take a minute and talk about how do I now manage those thoughts in my head that I can't get under control. So I'm going to give you a second to toss another question at me. Otherwise, I'll be talking for 20 minutes, and I know that you listening need another voice. And then we'll come back to how we actually address the voices in my head.
Yeah, so coming up was what are some mental exercises, because we all know that almost everything is a mental thing. And so what are some mental exercises that people can do just to get through, to get by, to better themselves, to help themselves, just all of that?
Well, we are in an age of Google.
Yeah.
And so they're out there. One of the things that's different about being in this pandemic versus being in hurricane season is in hurricane season, or right after, if we just went through a hurricane, we wouldn't have power. We wouldn't have access to so many things. We still have the luxury of doing life right now as though what's going on out there isn't happening. And that's actually one of the things you may find yourself coping with, is what we call cognitive dissonance, where what I know doesn't make sense. The two things don't add up. So I'm sitting in my house and life is beautiful. I'm doing this interview and the sun is shining, and there's a lot of pain and suffering going on, and my brain is trying to make sense of both of those things. So we find that managing that is a challenging thing to do, figuring out when I want my brain to shut up for a minute, and stop talking and stop running and stop giving me one more thing to think about. It's something that most of us didn't learn how to do well. So these are strategies we have to learn. but fortunately we have Google, so I don't have an exhaustive list now. There are things you can go on and find, and again, find what works for you. If you say to somebody who is in a rageful place, count to 10.
Mm-hmm.
If you say to somebody right now, just you feeling angry, count to 10. The average person is going to say what?
Brian doing this?
Right, not doing it. Or, that don't work for me. Right, so then count to 50. Because some of the strategies won't work exactly the way they're written.
Right.
So if we use the count to 10, the reason that you're told count to 10 is because your brain doesn't do thought and feeling simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do think and feel at the same time. So when you're feeling rageful and I tell you count to 10, is to kind of try to knock your brain over to thinking instead of feeling. Mm-hmm. So you count to 10 and you're still feeling. So if you look at, you're over here at the wall with your feelings and I'm trying to get you to the other wall and I say count to 10, you just got 10 steps over. You might need to count some more to get closer to the other wall, which is the thinking place, which will allow you time to figure out what to do next. So when you're having anxious thoughts and anxious feelings, one of the things you do is like you knock yourself over. This is going to age me, but when you think about like a record skipping, for your generation you call it vinyl. We used to have like records on a record player, and when you played it, sometimes it would pick up dust or it would pick up other things, and it would skip and repeat. And sometimes you had to pick up the needle and just blow on it and put it back on the same place. Sometimes you just flicked it a little bit to nudge it so it would get past the skip. Okay. So many people who are dealing with anxious thoughts, it's like you're in that record and you have to figure out whether you need to come up out of the space you're in and move to another space. That might mean getting up, coming out of your room, taking a walk, doing something else, and go back in to a new space and time. For some of us, it means knocking ourselves off of that thought hiccup. And you do that by, let's count, let me get to another space. Another technique that's used is called grounding when you're feeling very anxious. Again, anxiety has a lot to do with thoughts flooding in and the feelings that are attached to them. So grounding, and you can do this with me. I'm going to have you do this with me right here.
Okay.
All right? And if you're listening, you can do this also. Grounding is kind of saying, where am I in this space and time? So it kind of prevents the world from spinning out of control. So grounding, you want to put your feet flat on the ground or on the floor, if you can, where you are. Put your hands on your lap. You're going to take a good deep breath, and then grounding kind of goes like this. Tell me what room you're in right now.
My bedroom.
What color are the walls?
White.
And tell me what you see directly in front of you.
A TV stand and my TV.
And tell me what color shirt you're wearing.
Black.
Okay, so all we just did in that kind of grounding exercise, and you might have to do it, you might have to name every single item in your room, but again, it's nudging you over from what I feel to I have to think. So you might have to name more things around you. You might have to get more specific. So I could say, what's in the container there?
Markers.
And then if you're still feeling the agitation, I would say, what color are the markers?
All the colors of the rainbow.
Okay, can you tell me specifically what colors do you see there?
Red, orange, yellow, teal, turquoise, blue.
All of those are thoughts. It requires your brain to move to the place of thinking and not stay to the place of feeling. So I'm not going to ask you how you feel about any of the colors. I'm not going to ask you how you feel about the colors of your room. I'm going to ask your brain to think. And the better you're able to shift over to thinking, you're able to get out of the groove that has the anxious thought that's hiccuping in your space. So we talked about grounding. We thought about counting. Another thing that you can use is thought stopping. This one is pretty fun. You cannot use this one if you have a serious mental illness, because this one is going to ask you to do some imagining. And depending on some people, you also cannot use it if you're engaged in substance uses that cause you to have psychotic type experiences where you imagine things that are not there, because this asks you to come from a place of reality and to be able to imagine and then come back to a place of reality. So it's something like if I asked you to envision a pink elephant.
Okay.
All right, tell me where you see the pink elephant.
It's in the Sahara.
Oh, a pink elephant in the Sahara. And the pink elephant in the Sahara is wearing...
Blue trunks.
Blue trunks, okay. So now the pink elephant in the Sahara wearing the blue trunks, and he's dancing a jig. And can you see the pink elephant in the Sahara dancing a jig?
Yes.
The way our brain works is over time. If I told you to stop thinking about that pink elephant wearing the blue trunks, you won't be able to do it because you've already created an image.
And
it's already
dancing.
there, and he's dancing, and you see him dancing. He is dancing. And no matter what I say, when I say stop thinking about the pink elephant, it requires you to think about the pink elephant to stop. So you won't be able to do it. What you're able to do is realize that the same way your brain was able to create that image, it's able to erase that image. When we say things like, I can't stop thinking about it, that is not accurate because you're the one who pulled up the thought or the memory or the experience. The same way you pulled it up, you have the power to put it away. We see that in a lot of stories with prisoners, people who have been in torturous situations, where you're able to escape that experience by thinking outside of the place where you are. So I want you to take that pink elephant, and there's a box, right? Really close to where that pink elephant is. Gigantic box that the elephant can fit in. Can you see yourself putting that elephant in the box? You can let it walk into the box.
It's going to jig its way in there.
It's jigging its way into the box, all right? And then I want you to be able to see that box closed. The box is closed. The elephant is safe. Don't worry. It's the Sahara and it's hot, but we're going to make sure there's water inside. There are peanuts. What do elephants eat? I don't know.
I think it's grass and water.
Grass and water. It's in there. The elephant is okay. And then there's a giant crane that's going to come and pick up that box. And it's going to take that box to a safe home for the elephant. Where do you want to send the elephant in the box? It's going to go somewhere.
Forest.
To the nice, cool forest, green leaves. It's lush. And the elephant is going to love living there. So can you see the crane picking up the box? And it's moved the elephant to a nice luxurious place, open it, and the elephant is now out in the forest, walking its way away. And now we can focus on whatever else it is you want to think about. You place the elephant in the Sahara so you can place it anywhere else you want to. You have the power over your brain to do that. If you're practicing those kinds of techniques and you're finding they're not working, it usually means that there's another component. There's a chemical piece. Remember when I talked earlier about the need for medication or the need for counseling? It means that there are other things that are getting in the way of you being able to do it, and it's not because you don't want to. It means you have to learn how to do it. All right? So those are a couple techniques, and there are a gazillion of them that are fun to do. You just have to learn how to do it. Most of us didn't learn how to do it. We didn't learn how to do it when we were young. We weren't given permission to know how to cope. We were taught to shut up, be quiet, don't think about it. We don't know how to manage our thoughts. And so now you get to learn how to manage your thoughts. You've got the power to do that. And that doesn't require a sip or a toke or anything else but the strength and the power of your mind.
Yeah, that's really good.
Cool.
It sounds, so I'm actually myself when we're over, I'm going to look up some. I didn't think of any of those, but they sound like so much fun. I'm going to do the elephant one again later on. So, any other advice that you would give? Let's talk youth specific. Any advice you would give to youth at this time? Okay.
So, advice to the youth, I cannot do without giving advice to the parents.
Okay.
And that might be another question coming.
Yeah.
That's coming later. But I can't do the advice to the youth without giving the advice to the parents.
Okay.
Because the youth we're talking to, I'm presuming, are living in home with parents or other adult parent figures. And parents, it is very unfair and unjust for us to expect our children to behave as grown-ups in one breath and then expect them to behave as children in the next. That's crazy making. So we are in a very a difficult time for everybody to deal with. Our children don't know how to be at home for extended periods of time. We haven't created a world for them like that. They don't know how to be off of their phones or off of their tablets or away from their friends electronically for a long period of time. We've created an environment where they don't have to, they don't know how not to. So this is a time where we get to reorient. A lot of parents working at home, this is a time for us to get to reconnect with our families and with our children. And our feelings get hurt because now that we finally have time to say, sit down and let's talk, they don't want to talk to us. Well, it's because we created an environment already where it's unfamiliar for them to do. The other thing to parents that I want you to really pay attention to is children more attention pay to what you do than what you say. So it's hard for us to tell our children, don't do this, don't do that, when they're watching what we do, not just listening to what we say. So you have to pay attention to, like I mentioned, the beer in the fridge, the wine in the fridge, the cigarettes in the pocketbook, whatever it may be. They have to see what you're modeling. So all of the strategies and techniques that I talked about for them, you have to be willing to practice it for you. So when they see that you cope with life by taking a drink, then that's what you've taught them, is that the best way to cope with life is by taking a drink or taking a toke or taking a smoke or taking a bite out of something, whatever it is. And so this is a season for you as adults to think, is there a better way for me to cope that I can show my children, because they don't know how. I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, I'm aggravated. How do I expect them to cope any better than I do? So they're watching you be grown up, and then we're trying to teach them how to be grown up better than we are. And that's unfair. So adults, take your medication. Please take your medication. Talk to your therapist. Get one if you don't have one already. Get some help. Give yourself your time out when you need it, and start modeling some healthier behaviors for them. Some things also to think about is even like in your refrigerator, where do you place your alcohol? Is your wine and your beer on the same row in the refrigerator as the ketchup? So when the kid goes in there to reach for the ketchup, the closest thing to them is the alcohol, so they get familiar with reaching in and pulling out a bottle. Those are practices that happen over a longer period of time. Do they get in the rhythm? Do you eat dinner and then you smoke your cigarette? They eat dinner, what comes right after? Are they then learning that right after I eat, there should be something that gratifies me? And so they start, the imagery becomes, I do this, the meal meets my need, and then there's something else I should want. So we model those behaviors, and children pick up the same behaviors. So they might eat a meal and then come back to you a minute later wanting something else, and we say to them, but you just ate. But what they saw you do was get something you need and then get something you want. So those are all things that you might not see right now showing up in substance abuse for them, but it's training behaviors for them, and we don't want them to have to deal with those substance abuse problems later on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Right. In the here and now, for young people, it's a little piece of everything that I've said and really put together. This is a season of life you're not familiar with and you don't know how to do. But it's not a season that's forever. This is a moment. There are going to be a lot of really heartbreaking experiences. Some of you may have already lost a family member, a church member, a community member, someone you love and care about. Some of you may see your parents having to cope with those losses and you're unfamiliar with how to do that. Some of you have parents who work in the healthcare industry and are going out there every day and are at risk. And so you're afraid of what's going to happen to your family members. Some of you, as a collectivist people, have been away from family members where you usually have Sunday dinner together, or you usually get together with your friends on Friday night, and you don't know what to do in place of that anymore. So my invitation to you right now is to take this time to learn you a little bit better. Start a journal. Again, the web has some really great things on. do some getting to know you stuff. This is a good time to start figuring out, what do I really like? What do I really not like? Where do I see myself? I have a book. A couple friends of mine from high school, by the way, these are high school friends. We've been together as friends for a long time now. And we get together at least once a year usually, and we just started a book, Where Do I See Myself 5 years from now? And we know that what we write down may not happen. Mm-hmm. We're not married to the outcomes, like we're not going to do or die if this doesn't happen. But it's a good process, and it starts by asking like value questions. What do I value? What's really important to me? What do I cherish? What would I not want to lose in this season of life? And how do those build toward the things that I'm saving for? Financially, what am I saving for emotionally? What am I saving for mentally? What am I looking forward to? So if you can find a resource that helps you really explore, who am I now, and who do I want to see myself being, depending on which news you're watching on any given day. Folks are saying the end of April, June, September, whatever date you want to say, between now and April 30th. What is one goal that I'd like to see achieved? So if your bedroom looks like Who Done It and Got Away with It, you might just say that's end of April is 3 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks from now. What's one thing I want to do in my bedroom consistently every day? It says it takes 90 days to really solidify a good habit. So you got 2 weeks to get started. What's something I want to do? If it's just to pick up my clothes off the floor, apparently you don't live in my house. But if it's just to pick up my clothes off the floor, can I do that every day? And that's part of the new rhythm that I want to start. What's something I want to do? Pay attention to how much time you're spending on media, the news, with friends, whatever. Limit that time. Decrease it. Even if you feel like, it doesn't bother me. A lot of times things that we feel don't bother us, you don't realize until you're asleep and you're still waking up tired because you actually didn't rest well, because you ate so much crap, as in the stuff that we listen to, that it unsettled your sleep and you carried it with you to bed and you woke up the next morning with it. So pay attention to some of those things. But this is a good time to say, end of April, what do I want to see? All right? June, what do I want to see about myself by the end of June? And what would I want to see about myself by the end of August? So that's every couple months, just kind of setting some small goals to work toward. And think about it in the domains that we live in, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Like, take some time to get a good understanding of who you are as a human being. So that's one of the things I would say, spend a lot of time on getting to know yourself.
That's good. That's really good. And so, important, check on your family and friends. Like you mentioned, if you go somewhere for Sunday dinners and you're not with them at this time, call them. Hey, how you doing? Are you good over there? Just checking on your people. Just because you're at this time we're ordered to stay at home, it doesn't mean you have to be isolated or you can't be connected. You can still connect to those loved ones who you're normally connected to on a regular basis.
And beyond that, I want to share the example. There's a lady, I've been using her in several different conversations. Don't remember her name, but I watched an interview she did a couple years ago. She was like 90 something at that time, and she had lived through the 1918 influenza pandemic at that time that killed a lot of people. And she was 10 years old at that time. She, her mom, dad, brother were the only ones in their community who did not get sick. And so they took care of everybody else in the community. She was 10. And so her folks didn't put her at risk, but her responsibility, they would cook soup for everybody in the community. And her job was to go and take the soup to the neighbors, put it on their front porch, and come back. So at 10, she learned the value of taking care of other people and not just thinking about herself. So it helped her not to be so afraid of what will happen, what if, when she was out there taking care of other people. We, as a culture, as a community, unfortunately, live in a very I-driven world, a very selfish, I'm going to look out for me world. And so I don't think they still do it, but I remember like when my kids were in school, they had community service hours that you had to do. Do they still require that?
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of, right? So what I figured out, I had, my kids were in school, and I had so many people who would come to me. I ran an organization, I ran an agency, and I would have people who would come to me at the end of the school year and say, would you sign off these hours for my child because she didn't do her hours? And I'd be like, no. But she can't graduate without it. And I'm like, cool. Okay, so here's what she's going to do. I have a lot of things she can do, but I'm not signing off hours just for her to get hours and go about her merry way, because the goal of that was for a young person to understand the world is bigger than you, the individual, and to serve and to give and to offer. So one of the simplest things to do when you think about the COVID pandemic is that it is brutally impacting the elderly. It's not that, let me make sure you're hearing this clearly, young people. It doesn't mean that you will not be impacted by it. But please understand that how the choices you make will impact the elderly, who's the most vulnerable population. So what do we do in a season like this? My mom is 82 years old. She's got a bevy of grandkids and great-grandkids and all of that. You guys might be Instagramming, Facebooking, texting, whatever. She may not. She is, by the way. But the average 82-year-old may not. They may want a phone call. They may want a postcard. They may want, this would be the time for you to go beyond yourself, where you say, well, I don't really call people like that. And call people like that. Mm-hmm. So when you're saying about connecting with your people, this means not just your friends who you like to talk to, but talking to those people who may be so thankful for your phone call that it gives them the energy to live another day. So when you think about it, am I willing to make a call and say, hey, Grandma, how you doing? Hey, Mima, how you doing? Hey, Pops, how you doing? Where you wouldn't think of doing that, although they're sending you your card every birthday with your $20 bill in it. This is the time to go beyond yourself and be of care and service whichever way you can. It might mean looking around your neighborhood and seeing, do I need to go mow somebody's lawn? You don't have to be in contact with that person. You put on your mask. You stay outside. When they come outside, and, hey, sweetie, would you like some lemonade? You say, no, ma'am. No, thank you. So you don't have to go close. No, thank you, ma'am. I'm going to keep my 6 feet. So bring your water with you. But go mow somebody's lawn. Go see what your community needs and serve your community. That's one of the best ways to manage depression, is to go outside, be active in something. To manage anxiety is to take your mind off of what you're afraid of and put it on something you have control over. So go mow somebody's lawn. It'll be good for you.
Thank you. So, is there any last comments you would like to give?
Oh my God, if you say last comments, you're going to have to extend this.
One last comment.
One last comment.
End of sentence.
In a sentence. I really enjoyed this time with you. I thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. I think it's an honor for me to be able to talk to folks and help in any way I can. I'd have to put my last comment in 3 parts, and one would be to remind you, if you have a mental health issue that needs treatment, please get the treatment. Super important. 2, don't self-medicate. So that connects to the first one. If you have a mental health issue, don't self-medicate with drinking or drugging or sexing or eating or any of the other things that we tend to put inside of us to make us feel better. This is temporary. Think about what I want if what I use right now is going to be productive at the end of this. Do I want to see myself at the end of this after I have done whatever that thing is to try and get through it? Will I be in better condition or worse condition? So that's one of the ways you can measure if what you're doing is healthy or not healthy, helpful or not helpful. And thirdly, please know that you are specifically, intentionally designed to be here in this life on purpose right now. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't even let the thoughts in your head make you think anything different than that. You are mysteriously and beautifully and purposefully and wonderfully made, and live like you know that to be true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have reached the end, guys. So I just want to say thank you one last time to Sonia for coming out, for talking to us. And we will get through this, guys. We will get through this. An end day will be coming, and that's about it. So enjoy the rest of your day. Be productive. Wake up tomorrow morning. Change your clothes.
Brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth. And just take it one day at a time. All right? So goodbye.